Welcome to this rapid revision session on exam skills. This will be covering paper 3, question 1. What can you infer questions worth 4 marks? This is in the Pearson Edexcel Paper. Firstly, an introduction to the Pearson Edexcel Paper 3. These skills might be useful for other exam boards as well, but I'd recommend that you use something specific to your exam board rather than this guide if you really want specific advice on answering questions. The Pearson Edexcel Paper 3 generally covers a modern depth study. An example of such a study, which I teach, is the USA, Conflict at Home and Abroad, 1954 to 1975. This particular topic comprises the civil rights, which is the component known as conflict at home, and the Vietnam War, which means conflict abroad. Other topics are similarly organised, e.g. Germany 1918 to 1939 constitutes both Weimar Germany and Nazi Germany. You'll answer questions on sources, your knowledge, and interpretations in this paper. Therefore, there is a separate sources and interpretations sheet and booklet included as part of the exam. You can see that in the instructions on the front page. The total time for this exam is 1 hour or sometimes 1 hour and 25 minutes. You'll find the timings put on the front of the exam paper. That's the time for both sections. It's worth bearing in mind that if you were, for example, doing conflict at home and abroad, it's not necessarily to say that the first section will be on civil rights and the second section will be on the Vietnam War. Actually, it could be the other way round too. Let's first of all consider the wording of the question and the instructions that come with it. It's really important to pay attention to every word of this so that you don't make stupid mistakes like answering too few or even too many questions. This is section A. The first instruction says answer both questions. So there'll be 2 questions here, one on a source and one using your knowledge and explanation skills. We're going to be focusing on the source question today. The next instruction is to study source A below and then answer question 1. You can pause the video here and read it for yourself or listen to me read it now. Source A, from a report about the events at Little Rock High School on the 25th of September 1957. A crowd of 300 people had gathered to protest against the black students joining Little Rock High School. They waited impatiently for the students to arrive. There were 350 soldiers on duty. The 9 black students arrived in a car. They were protected by soldiers who were travelling in jeeps and carrying machine guns. At 9:28 a.m, 6 white students walked out of school to protest against the presence of black students. At 11:30 a.m, all students had to evacuate the building because it was believed there was a bomb in the school. Okay, so this source and this question are all about civil rights, but remember in the exam it could just as easily be about Vietnam, or indeed if you're doing the Germany topic it could be either on Weimar Germany or Nazi Germany. You might be doing one of the other topics too, which I won't comment on now, but hopefully the basic skills and how you approach these questions will still be useful. The next thing to have a look at is the issue raised within the question, so let's take a look at that now. Give 2 things that you can infer from source A about opposition to the desegregation of Little Rock High School. The key issue that's being raised here is opposition to desegregation at Little Rock High School. Inferences need to go beyond the blindingly obvious of what's in the question. That's what it means to infer. But your inference should be relevant to and related to opposition to the desegregation of Little Rock High School. Otherwise, you won't pick up the marks. This question is assessing your source analysis skills, which in the mark scheme is called AO or Assessment Objective 3, and should take you only about 6 minutes to do. However, many of my students find that it takes less time to do this, which buys you a couple more minutes for the other longer questions later on. This is what the mark scheme looks like, and this is exactly what the examiner will be using when they mark your work. The target is source analysis, making inferences, which is Assessment Objective 3, and all 4 marks go to that. You'll get 1 mark for each valid inference up to a maximum of 2 inferences. The second mark for each example should be awarded for supporting detail selected from the source. And as long as your inference is about the raised issue, which I've circled here, then you should get that mark. And as long as you choose a relevant example from the source, perhaps a quote, you'll get the second mark. That means that these should be some of the easiest marks in the paper. This is what it'll look like when you are answering this question. You'll be given a form to fill out like this, so as long as you've filled all sections, it's really easy to tell that you've completed all of the question. Here's a reminder of the source and of the question. You could pause the video here and have a go at your first inference and detail from the source now, or keep it playing and I'll show you how you might go ahead. So here's my example answer. I can infer that there was widespread opposition to black pupils joining Little Rock High School. The detail in the source that tells me this is that 350 soldiers were needed to protect students from a crowd of around 300 protesters. There we go, that's where I've got the information from. So looks like that is an inference that's about the raised issue, and that is a valid example. Let's make sure I've got the marks. Here's the mark scheme again. These bullet points are suggested things that people could pick up on, both in terms of inferences, but also in terms of the details that back them up. Don't feel that you have to use these, but they are just suggestions. So my first one is a valid inference, and my second is a valid example from the source. All good so far. Let's have a look at my second inference. I can infer that black pupils wanted to attend Little Rock High School. It says that 9 pupils arrived to attend the school. Here's the example within the source. So does this fulfill the mark scheme? Let's have a look. You might be picking up on a mistake here. Look at these examples. Is my inference actually related to the issue in the question, opposition to desegregation at Little Rock High School? No, it is not. Also, it's not truly an inference, it's just something that's pretty obvious. So that would not get a mark. And because of that, the supporting detail is also irrelevant, and that can't get the mark either. So this is an example of how to do it badly. Best I do it correctly next time. Let's have a look at what I could have done to get the marks. I can infer that some pupils within the school opposed integration with black pupils. It describes 6 white pupils leaving the school in protest, and there's my example. Now that's much more relevant to the named inquiry, and it fits in with the marking instructions too. So I'd have got another mark for that relevant inference, and a final mark for a relevant supporting detail from the source. Easy enough when you know how. You've just got to make sure that you are making your inferences relevant to whatever you're being asked in the question, regardless of what the source is or what the question is. Some final points. What can you infer questions should be easy marks, but you do need to be careful about 1 or 2 things. You simply need to identify 2 valid inferences based upon the stated inquiry or focus within the question, and support them with valid details from the source. It should take no longer than 6 minutes, and many of you will find yourself doing these a lot quicker than that. This question could be on either part of your studies. So if you're one of my students, this could be on the USA, conflict at home and abroad, either civil rights or Vietnam. I hope that's been useful to you, and if it has, please subscribe to the channel and like this video to let me know. If there are other questions that you're desperate for me to do a exam skills revision session on, then don't worry, I've got more coming, but you could always pop a request in the comments below and I'll see if I can move it to the top of my list. Other than that, I'll say thanks very much for watching, and if you're about to sit an exam, the very best of luck.